Welcome to part 2 of Human Resources at Plymouth State University's workshop on performance management. So we just completed an activity looking at how our priorities and our day-to-day are in line. So now let's talk purely about performance management. My first question is, what is the purpose? I think we all have our own thoughts and ideas on the purpose of performance management. For example, I believe that performance management is designed to help engage the employee to be a better employee, as well as a good steward of the institution, through continual and ongoing support and evaluation of what they do and how it links in with the university's strategic mission, plan, etc. The duties and responsibilities of the employee play a major role in their development, so how can we emphasize that, keep it in line with the institution, and also provide individuals with the opportunities they need to develop? What is the process? In my opinion, performance management should be an ongoing process. For example, do you have regular one-on-ones with your employee? What does regular mean? One-on-ones are a great tool to make performance management A, ongoing, but B, more manageable. Speaking directly with your employee intentionally on where they're at, what do they need, and how are you going to help them move forward is important. For example, some individuals use weekly one-on-ones as a strategy, bi-weekly, monthly. It really all depends on your employee, their role and responsibilities, as well as your role as a supervisor. Performance management is a partnership between the supervisor and the employee, so there should be as much engagement as possible in that process. Many supervisors have said, well, this sounds really overwhelming. I don't have time to really manage performance when I've got all this day-to-day operations I need to worry about, etc., etc. Well, if you make performance management, the supervision of your employee, part of your day-to-day, it becomes more manageable. Whereas if you wait to simply talk with your employee once a year at the annual evaluation time, it can be quite challenging and definitely overwhelming. So looking at it piece by piece, day by day, will help make performance management more manageable. And then what is the approach? My recommendation is that the approach is direct. It's inclusive. For example, how many times have you sat down with your employee and asked them, what do you need? So let's go to a little activity all about needs. So I want you to identify one of your staff members that has a need. What is that need? It may or may not be a need that you can assist with, but just think about your employee and what that need is. In fact, if you're watching this with your employee, why not turn to them and ask them the question, what do you need? Then, using these questions as prompts, explore that need. So, for example, is this a one-time need or continual need? An employee may have a continual need of needing more time to focus so that they can achieve the task at hand. Or they may have a one-time need of a new computer. Is this need indicative of a larger need or issue? If an employee needs more time to focus, is it really that they need more time, or do they need a better space? Do they have too much work? What is really the crux of the issue? In addressing this need, am I helping this person move forward, or am I inhibiting their progress? Sometimes letting the employee work through it on their own is the best thing you can do. Other times, maybe just providing them with a structure to meet their need is a great thing. And then other times, maybe you need to actually address that need. It's important for you to take a step back and look at what the need is communicating. What is my follow-up process to ensure that the need was met appropriately? Again, performance management is a partnership. Even if you can't meet that need with the employee, you should still be working to support them in meeting that need on their own, or helping them find the assistance they need to meet that need. That way, they know that as a supervisor, you are actually invested in their development. Is there a link between this person's needs and their values? More often than not, there is. So if so, how might this need impact their performance? An example I used in the workshops in person was, let's say you believe a need for an employee is delegation. This employee, however, values independence very highly. They believe that the only way that things should get done is through them because they'll do it right. They don't want to let go of anything because they believe it will reflect poorly on their ability to do work. So they hold on to everything. But ultimately, delegation is what they need to move forward and to grow as an individual, as an employee. So how do you reconcile what you perceive there need to be delegation and what they value, their independence, and its linked to their performance? So that's something for you to think about with this activity. Moving forward in the approach process, one of the elements of performance management is the evaluation process. Now I know I've had much feedback from those participants in the workshops in person that our rating scale leaves something to be desired. And I agree. And at Human Resources, we're going to be actively looking at this and hopefully in the future designing a system that better reflects the needs of our institution. But for now, we are using this system. So looking at this system, ask yourself these questions. What does NI mean to me? Needs improvement. In our workshops, it spanned the gamut. Some individuals said needs improvement means, well, they're not doing the baseline expectations of their position, so therefore they need improvement. Others said, well, you always need improvement unless you're not standing. Everyone needs improvement. So looking at discrepancy across supervisors, imagine what's like between supervisor and employee. My recommendation is that you sit down with your employee prior to the evaluation process and define these together. Now, these are actually defined on the evaluation form, but each of us looks at these through our own lens. So in order to have those important conversations with your employee about what these mean, sit down together, review the definitions, and then talk about what these mean using real-world examples. For example, if your employee is fully satisfactory, take an example from their day-to-day that you have witnessed and share that with them. Another thing to think about is that this rating scale a lot of times seems like a grading scale, A, B, C, D, F, which means that fully satisfactory would be a C. And that's an inaccurate perception because fully satisfactory means that you are meeting the baseline expectations for your position. You're doing your job. And that's a good thing. So sit down with your employees to communicate that. Here are some important conversations to consider. How do you effectively communicate needs improvement? What constitutes an outstanding? Both of these are really tough conversations. For example, needs improvement means your employee has not been performing to the minimum qualifications, the standards. Ideally, you've been communicating with them regularly to try and help them improve so that when it comes time for the evaluation process, it's not a surprise. But still, handling the issue in a way that is supportive, that says needs improvement isn't terrible. It means that it's an opportunity for growth. It means that you have a chance here to truly develop in whatever way you need to be successful here at this institution. And as your supervisor, that is exactly what I'm going to help you to do. We're going to partner together and we're going to make this needs improvement until fully satisfactory. SMART goals can be very, very helpful here in working with an employee that needs improvement. When working with someone who's outstanding, which is fabulous, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to help this person? If a person is outstanding, genuinely and truly, you have tangible examples to back up why they're outstanding, then I would ask them, what do you need from me as your supervisor to help you progress and move forward? Because ultimately, someone, if they're truly outstanding in every aspect of their position, might be getting bored. Maybe they're not challenged enough in their role. If they can do everything expertly, then as a supervisor, what can you do to help them? And that's what I would ask them. I would also challenge you supervisors who are supervising employees that may have been supervised by someone else who gave all those, to challenge those employees because chances are you're probably going to rate them according to the scale that is presented, and maybe they're not genuinely all O's. It's pretty hard to be all O in every area unless, let's say, you've been here for 30 years doing the same job and you've done expert work the whole time. So having a conversation about the value of fully satisfactory and what that means, and really the discrepancy between the two, outstanding and fully satisfactory. Outstanding is a top pinnacle we should all aspire to, but it takes a lot to get there. And so having those important conversations are important. Here are some common pitfalls for supervisors in the appraisal process. Basing assessment on only one of the employee's tasks. Making a decision about the employee's performance prior to the gathering of objective information. This is important because we don't always see our employees in the day-to-day. So asking your employee prior to the evaluation process, write down a list of accomplishments and challenges that you had this year. That way you have a better understanding of what the employee has achieved and what areas in which they need continued support. Using your own value system as a standard is a pitfall. Again, our rating system is defined on the evaluation form, but we look at it through our own lens. Try and be consistent and revert back to looking at the actual definitions on the form. That will help keep you consistent and avoid confusion for your employee and perhaps their future supervisor as well. Letting personal traits of the employee influence your appraisal, along with giving special consideration to qualities you perceive in yourself. Let's say you have two employees that perform pretty much at the same level. If one employee is more like you and your buddy-buddy, and another employee is, well, let's just say really annoying, chances are you might give one FS plus and one FS minus. That discrepancy is really hard to rationalize. So looking at your own relationships and how they may impact your performance evaluation is useful to keeping you on track to being fair and equitable. And then rushing through the evaluations due to time constraints. It always creeps up on us. It's the nature of the beast. Some recommendations I've received from other participants are, working throughout the year and typing in notes in a Word document, for example, Excel spreadsheet, whatever medium you choose, about your employee's process throughout the year. Later on in this session, I will also showcase to you some additional tools that might help you keep on top of the performance management process by doing day-to-day or weekly activities. I want to share a little anecdote here in that you see I have an image of a car and a pothole. When we don't have important conversations with our employees, when we don't address issues or concerns that arise, what happens? We develop potholes. I like to think of each of our departments as a road that leads to the success of the university. And when we start developing potholes, people who go down our road tend to get frustrated, annoyed, and disenfranchised. Eventually what happens is people stop wanting to go down the road because it causes too much damage, it's hard to navigate and maneuver, it's just downright annoying. You don't ever want to be the road that no one wants to go down. So when you see cracks in your road, when you see a pothole beginning to develop, you fill it with intentional conversations that help address those issues and keep those things from forming. And now let's look at the outcome. I think we might be running out of time, and so we're going to have to do a part 3 video as well. But let's look at outcome. What should the outcome of a performance management process look like? Well, it should be clear, concise, and collaborative. Whatever your process is, whether it's the evaluation, whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a workshop, the intent of the performance management, the outcome should be clear. The employee should be able to understand it in as few words as possible as to why this is happening, what is the purpose, what is the role, and it should be collaborative. You and the employee working together to determine what their role and responsibility is, what your role and responsibility is, and how you're going to work together to manage performance so that everyone can achieve their goals and so that the department and the university can continue moving forward successfully. Here are some tools that I used to use when I was a residence director. This is a goal sheet, which if you would like to have access to, please email me, that my supervisor would have us do, I would say yearly or maybe semesterly, and we would look at our goals and our roles as residence directors. Another example from my residence director days was that my supervisor would have us complete this form prior to our 101, which was either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on what was going on in the semester. We would complete this form and send it to our supervisor in advance. One, this provided him with a foundation of some of the things that we were going to discuss during our 101s. And two, it provided him and myself a record. So let's say, for example, evaluation time has come up, and maybe I'm really getting on my supervisor's nerves. I've been really annoying, and I haven't performed to the highest standard. Instead of looking at just the past 90 days, which is a habit when doing evaluations, my supervisor could look back at these reports which he stored and see all the great things I had done throughout the year, as well as all the challenges I had and how I overcame them. So having a tracking system like this makes your job as a supervisor easier because you're able to follow up with the employee in a timely way, and you're also able to work with your employee throughout the year and to see their own growth and development. This makes the process of the evaluation actually less daunting because you already have information right here that you've saved week after week or bi-weekly or month after month that showcases what your employee has done. Modification to this form could be the employee submits it with their outcomes, and then the supervisor adds to it, maybe as part of the meeting, maybe after the meeting. Is another step that you could take to look at what you do and how you make performance management part of your day-to-day. So this is the end of part 2, and we'll do a quick cut over to part 3 in the next video.